Good day, dear students. In the last class, we have seen how Cabral describes the landscape of the Pavaratty River. Today, we are starting yet another section of the poem. The landscape of the Pavaratty River continues. In silence, the river bears its bloating poverty, pregnant with black earth. It yields in silence, in black earthen capes, in black earthen boots or gloves for the foot or hand that plunges in. As sometimes happens with dogs, the river seemed to stagnate. Its waters would turn thicker and warmer, flowing with the thick, warm waves of a snake. It had something of a crazy man's stagnation, something of the stagnation of hospitals, prisons, asylums, of the dirty and smothered life, dirty, smothering laundry it trudged through. So the point here is again describing the condition of the Pavaratty River. We have seen how he brings in the comparison with a dog, a street dog at that. We have also seen how he describes the people who lives on the banks of the river, and we have a proper description of the kingi type of vegetation that is on the banks, like the kingi hair of the black people who are living in poverty. So, continuing that description, Cabral says that Pavaratty River and the stagnation river faces they are all described elaborately in this section. Once again, in so many different terms. The bloating of the river, it indicates poverty, lack of pure water, and now it is pregnant. So the bloating means sometimes this river will rise slightly and it will continue like that, and it is not free, it is not pure water that is flowing. It is a kind of a thick black stuff that is bloating up. So at times it looked like a stomach that is bloated because of poverty. You must have seen pictures of children with the skin coming out, with the bones covered in skin only, and with a bloated stomach, which again shows malnutrition and utter poverty. The river looks exactly like that. That kind of a bloated look it has, which indicates poverty. Or it can also be the lack of pure water. So the bloating river can be because of poverty, lack of pure water, and then the poet says it is pregnant. So bloating and pregnant, these are two terms that he uses to describe the sudden rise and fall of that thing that we call as the river now. And it is covered with, or it is filled with black earth, not water. Black earth means it is a lot of slime and lack of a squeaky type of thing which we can't call even water. So the description is in so many terms, and you feel for the river when the poet says or uses these terms to describe the river in this manner. So naturally we have to conclude that the river is now filled with black earth and yields, capes, boots or gloves for foot or hand that plunges in. So to indicate the river condition, the poet says, suppose people come and put their hand into the river, they will come up with black gloves. Suppose they put their feet into the water to enjoy without knowing what it is, they will come away with the boots. And in the same manner, if they plunge in, they will have the capes also. So you find the black or the degradation is like the black earth, and it is the total contamination of the river. There is now other description for it. He had described it in so many words that as readers we don't have any further description to understand the condition of the river. So you find that if you put your hand into the water of the river, and if your hand comes away covered with black slime, and as if you have worn a black glove, you are presented with a black glove, or if you put your foot in the river just to cool it off, and if it comes away with the black boots, black color, indicating the black boots, though he uses these humorous terms, we know the seriousness of the condition, because no river deserves this kind of degradation. No river at all. Somehow it had turned out to be. And we have a stream nearby, and the condition of the water in that stream is exactly like this. We don't call it a river, it is just a stream. And very thin one that, and it has its edges have been encroached to such an extent that it has become very thin, and the water that is there inside is so smelly, and I thought that it was the sewer of the town, that kind of degradation, that kind of black color it has. And I was wondering why they have not covered the sewer in this manner, only to be reminded by my neighbors that it is not a sewer, but it is actually the stream that is running through. And when the floods came, you can imagine the condition of the people who are living on the banks of that stream, and the condition of the road when this water comes out, all its dark color and the dirt and squalor coming up and being washed away by the fresh water, but at the same time flooding its banks. It is not really really fertile as it is with the usual rivers. When there was the Nile Valley civilization, they waited for the river to flood, because the next year onwards it will be prosperity, and that year of that flood will be maybe poverty for them, but they can store in for the next 7 years or more years by the fertility of the river because of this flooding. But not the rivers of our times. Though it looks black, it is not fertile. It is just full of dirt and squalor, which will not nourish any plant, not even any life, anything which has got life. And that's why you don't find many fish. Fish just can't flow there, and whatever fish is there doesn't have the silver wings or anything. It just had disappeared. So the river is now filled with black earth, and it now yields capes, boots and gloves for foot or hand that plunges in. So the poet says. So black capes, black boots or black gloves, they all have a sense of humor in it, and we must say that it is a black humor, because not because of the color of the black earth of the river, but because of the way in which there is that humorous situation out of a very sick situation, and it is that which you find here. So such is the degradation of the river, and Cabral describes it so very aptly. So you find that he had used the imagery of the dog, and for a time he had slipped away from that imagery and had gone to the banks of the river and the water, and now he is again bringing back the imagery of the dog, and he is now describing the stagnation of the river. And describing the stagnation, Cabral says, the water had become thick and warm like a snake, and it has got warm waves, and it is now the flowing water of Pavaratty River. However much warm or how warm a snake is, you will not touch it. However good looking a snake is, you daren't touch the snake, because you know that it is poisonous. Likewise, this river had become thick and it has become warm, and it makes warm waves, not just big waves but warm waves, slight bulges, and it is the flowing water of the Pavaratty River. There is some undercurrent, and maybe the water is being carried away, and it also carries the dirt that is in it. But no one with any sense will ever plunge his feet or hands into that river. It is like plunging or trying to hold on to a snake or trying to catch a snake. And snakes are warm, a warm snake. But even then, this particular snake is so deadly, so you daren't touch the snake. You may admire the snake, but you have no intention of going near that. And this is because it is, we know by nature that they are not really friendly creatures, and by accident we may hurt it, and it may try to bite you, so it is poisonous. So naturally, people from all over the world has got this aversion to a snake. They keep a respectful distance from that snake because that is good for our health. And maybe there are snake charmers who can do a lot of things, tricks with the snake. We are not speaking about them. We are actually speaking about this river which had turned like a warm thick snake, and its warm waves like the snake moves. So you must have seen how zigzag like sometimes it goes, and how straight line like that also it moves. But even then, the fluidity of the snake is that which is indicated here. So this river has got the fluidity of a warm snake, and it makes its warm waves, and we can speak of the river in its terms because it has got a little bit of flowing water. It's stagnant, but at the same time sometimes it may move, maybe because of the air currents that come, or maybe because of the gases that are formed in it, and so there is a slight movement, and it is that which is indicated by the movement of the river, which is compared to the movement of a warm thick snake, or a snake which is thick and warm like a river which has become thick and warm like a snake. So here you find the flowing of water of the Pavaratty flowing water of the Pavaratty river, and Cabral just had to find so much of things, or what he is reminded of when he finds this dark stagnant thing that is there in the river, or what we call as what the river had become. And it is in this sense that he uses this imagery of a snake. So the imagery of the dog is there, but it is again brought back by the poet, and you will find it in the next few lines. So he speaks of stagnation, and in so many terms. So he says that it is like the stagnation of a crazy man who actually used to be so very crazy, running about doing things, and maybe talking to people. We call him a crazy man, and now he is not moving around. He is stagnant, standing still. And he again continues with some other images, brings in some other images like the stagnation of hospitals, like the stagnation of prisons, asylums, that is, shelters. So why should he bring in the hospitals, prisons, asylums? Do you think that these are pleasant places? No. And you will find that if he had substituted it with the hotels, parlors, or even any other places, then we would have been quite happy with those terms. But those terms do not remain stagnant. People will be coming in and out of that, and they are happy people, or people trying to be happy. So naturally, there is no stagnation for that, unless the owner is that lazy and doesn't take care of the business that is coming along. And so a hotel can also be stagnant, a parlor can also be stagnant, and things like that. But why should the poet Cabral speak of the stagnation of hospitals, prisons, asylums, or even shelters? These are places where people go when they are sick, and they try to get cured in hospitals. And prison, no person is happy in a prison. Asylums, again, no one is happy there. And shelters, you are away from your home, and these shelters will provide you only not a permanent one, but a temporary home for you. So you are not happy there. So it is these unhappy situations that he is reminded of when he speaks of the stagnation of hospitals, prisons, asylums, shelters, etc. And why the stagnation? Because suppose the hospital authorities are prompt or anything, then there will be stagnation, which is even much worse. And the sadness or the unhappiness of its inmates will increase. The same goes for prisons. We have not heard of anyone being happy in prison. But nowadays, people are or leaders are taking, authorities are taking care to have yoga in prison and trying to bring them out of their cells and trying to make them work in open air so that they can be free for some time and or get the sense of freedom for some time, work hard and earn some money out of that. And that is not stagnant prisons, but they are progressive prisons, asylums too, in this manner. But he speaks of the stagnation of hospitals, prisons, asylums, and how this will affect the morale of its inmates. And likewise, this river is stagnant. They are dirty and smothered life, and stagnation of such a life, dirty, smothering, like they are like the dirty, smothering laundry. The dirty, smothering laundry, which the dress that are to be laundered, that is not washed properly, it will have a kind of a smell, irritating and stuffy smell, and you can't live with that in a room or in a house. So naturally, when the clothes are dirty, you just wash it away as quick as possible. So here you find that he speaks of stagnation and the stagnation of the river mainly, and he says that it is like the stagnation of a crazy man. And like the crazy man's stagnation, he speaks of the stagnation of hospitals, prisons, asylums, shelters, and he speaks of the dirty laundry, smothering laundry, and all these are brought to the forefront by the poet. And even though he is speaking of Pavaratty River, he takes this as an opportunity to point out the stagnation of life itself, and not in the life of one person alone, everywhere. How it obstructs growth, how it obstructs the coming up of new ideas or new vision or even creating a healthy atmosphere. So, from the river Pavaratty, the poet Cabral is taking us to a long journey, a philosophic journey to the population outside, and it is about this population that he speaks of. And he speaks of the stagnation of life everywhere, how it obstructs growth, how it does not create any growth or even encourage growth, and how it just do not encourage new ideas. In some area, it is the lack of bringing up of new ideas, and so hence there is a stagnation or a new vision or outlook in life or even in the work atmosphere that you are having. There also there will be stagnation, and if there is stagnation, it will not be a healthy atmosphere. So in order to have a healthy atmosphere, you need to have new ideas or growth in all forms, in all areas. And if the growth is lacking, then there is stagnation of life, like the stagnation of the Pavaratty River. The river, why the stagnation? Because of the dirt or the contamination that is accumulated, and so naturally there is no way for the river to act on all by itself on it. But we have a chance, or we have the ability to change the stagnation of our life and remove the obstacles that prevent our growth or our area of growth. And it is also a place, or we have also the ability to have a new idea or a new vision, and thus create a healthy atmosphere all around us. So it is up to the human beings to change that condition, and the river alone will not be able to change its condition unless it is a heavy rainy season. But even then, the dirt will start accumulating, and it will take several rainy seasons continuously without human beings tampering with it. That will change the nature of the river, the contaminated life of the river, and it needs us human beings to do that. But in our life, it may not be the others, but you yourself, that is, human beings were uh, given free will. You must have listened to the sonnet of Milton, where he speaks upon his blindness, and we have the free will to choose, and choosing the whatever to do is left up to you, up to the human beings, and it is this will that makes us move the obstacles of our path and create new ideas and remove the stagnation from our life, and thus create a healthy atmosphere. So, in a way, Cabral is not just speaking about Pavaratty River, because if he were to speak only of that, it will be limited to just one river in Brazil or Pernambuco, or he doesn't want that. He is taking that as an occasion to speak of the world in general and also about humanity as such. So, the philosophical aspect of this poem is emphasized here by the way he speaks of the stagnation of life, by the stagnation that he indicates in the crazy man's stagnation, in the terms that he uses, like the stagnation of hospitals, stagnation of prisons, asylums, shelters, etc. So, the poet Cabral is really very thoughtful about the stagnation of the people, the world, situations around, and he is now pointing it out through his poem. So, some people are concerned, we are all concerned, but we have no idea how to express it. Cabral does it through his poems, and his poems are published, and it is there for the whole world to see and read on. And it is that which you find him find himself concerned with. So this is something that we have to consider when a poet is speaking about something, or he may start with that something, but he will be speaking more about the world situation or the life in general. So the landscape of the Pavaratty River is just an occasion for him to speak about the condition of the world also. And so you find that he takes this opportunity to speak about the condition of the world and of all the situations, and where people are unhappy, and where they can't just move around, and they become stagnant. And as a result of this stagnation, there is unhappiness also. And if a river is happy, it will be running along, and it is flowing along with the clear water and the bubbles, the sound of the fountain, everything will be there. But there is nothing for this river. It is quiet, very quiet, too quiet, I must say. And this is what Cabral is emphasizing through this earlier stanza. The next stanza is something of the stagnation of decayed palaces eaten by mold and mistletoe, something of the stagnation of obese trees dripping 1,000 sugars from the Pernambuco dining rooms it trudged through. So this long paragraph is all about something more. Something more in the sense that it is about Pernambuco. So why Pernambuco? Because he is speaking of the stagnation of decayed palaces. Decayed palaces eaten by mold and mistletoe. Mold and mistletoe. Mistletoe you keep on the door for the Christmas season, and a person puts it up for the season, and after the season you take it out, and there is no one to take it out because nobody is bothered with that, and they are so busy with something or the other, or they are not caring enough to make that change. And so he speaks of decayed palaces. He is not speaking about decayed huts, because we know that in a hut there is not enough space for people to move about, and so whatever little space they have, they will keep it neat and tidy. But with the palace, you have a lot of unnecessary rooms, and this is the condition of most houses, most rich and rich houses in Pernambuco, and they have a lot of rooms, and they don't have enough people to live there, and so there is indeed a decay for these places, and the mold, and because of the cold season and because of the extreme heat, you find the mold eating along the walls and everywhere. This is because people are not caring, because they don't have that kind of time or even the attitude or even the mindset to clean these rooms always, because they have become so very stagnant. He speaks of the palaces eaten by mold and mistletoe. He speaks of something of the stagnation of obese trees dripping 1,000 sugars. Obese trees dripping 1,000 sugars indicates the most popular business of Pernambuco, the sugar factories. And they have been having lots of sugar, and that was bringing them lots of money. And there was progress among that in the area for some time, but after some time again decay. From the Pernambuco dining rooms, it trudged through, dripping 1,000 trees. There is something of the stagnation of obese trees dripping 1,000 sugars. From the Pernambuco dining rooms, it trudged through. The Pernambuco, not that the river is trudging through the Pernambuco dining rooms, but because the decay is trudging through the Pernambuco dining rooms. So from the Pavaratty River, Cabral moved on to life in general and also to institutions. He speaks of the stagnation of decayed palaces, the mold and mistletoe has indicated the obese trees and the dripping sugars, which bring about prosperity. And once upon a time, the place was prosperous because of these sugar factories. But now Pernambuco they have built palaces. Maybe out of that money coming, instead of the house which is necessary for them, they had built up a house to show the grandeur or their business success. And now, when there is not much people to live in the house is decayed, or it has accumulated mold, and the mistletoe from the earlier season is still remaining there, which also indicate that people have become really stagnant. So he is also trying to speak about the country Pernambuco, because Pavaratty River flows through Pernambuco also. And as the river flows, whatever that the river can see on its banks, the river is reporting, or in a way the river is taking a chance to speak of. And maybe the river is using the poet as voice to speak about the sights that it comes across. So it is in this manner that Cabral describes the movement of the Pavaratty River and what the river can see from the way it is flowing through the different places. The flowing is very slow, and so it gets time to peep through the windows of these maybe palaces or even the houses, let's assume, because this is what Cabral is trying to bring about, because he is speaking about the mold of the palaces. In order to see the mold and decay of the palaces, you have to peep into that palace or even outside and see that it is not painted properly, not well kept. And so he speaks of the institutions also, and he speaks of the stagnation of the places which are of really important to us. So you must have heard of the hospitals which were not working for a long time. They were now brushed up and given a new coat of paint and new cots and mattresses, and they are being used for COVID patients now, which also shows that a time will come when that stagnation is removed and it is being used in the proper manner. Maybe that is good for the country also. So whatever type of stagnation the country or the people face, it is not good. It does not bring about any happiness. So it is our duty to remove this stagnation, and in a way he is pointing out to such a situation that he has come across, which is really interesting because he is also speaking about the way people and things become useless after some time, and the way people conceive certain ideas and find that it is not in keeping with their situations. So palaces were there, but there is no one taking care of the palaces, so there is mold and mistletoe there, and there is stagnation there. So here, Cabral is speaking about the Pernambuco dining rooms. He speaks of sugars from obese trees. There is a reason to speak of that because Cabral knew the place at Pernambuco as a place which has got a lot of sugar factories, and as such, they have rich clients or rich owners, rich people. So it speaks of sugars from obese trees. And why do the trees become obese? Because it is filled with so much of such things like sugars. Maybe cultivation has gone to such an extent that to increase the productivity of the trees, they must have given the trees something so that it is not running its usual course, but is made to be too fat or obese, and thus yields sugars. And the houses which are now and you will find these houses, the dining rooms, the houses which are situated on the banks of this river. He speaks of sugars from obese trees which now decorate the dining rooms of the houses of Pernambuco. So the poem is as much about the river Capibaribe as well as the landscape it flows through. So Cabral speaks of both, that is, speaks of both the river and also of that landscape. That's why when you come across the title, you will find that it is landscape of the Capibaribe River. He is not speaking about the river alone, he is speaking about the sights the river finds as it flows through the different lands and the landscape, the land and the people around it. So he is speaking of both the river and also of the landscape. So it is more about the landscape as much as about as much about the landscape as much as it is about the river also, Capibaribe River. And these thoughts that equate the condition of nature and that of the man living on the banks of Capibaribe River. So you can't just write about a river and speak of it flowing through the forest alone, because a river just do not restrict its flowing to a forest alone. And wherever there is a river, there will be habitation, human habitation. And the river naturally flows from the hills to the mountains, and then mountains and hills to the forest and the plateau, and then finally to the river. On the banks of the river, you will find several types of vegetation and also human beings. And it is this which makes the landscape. So, Cabral is justifying the title of the poem. So, when you are asked to justify the title of the poem, Landscape of the Capibaribe River, you have to speak of the people living on the banks of the river, not just in one area, but as it flows through the different states or different districts. You will find it having different types of clients or different types of people, some very rich, some very poor. And here he has spoken of the black people. Now he is speaking about the rich people living in Pernambuco and also the dining rooms. And he speaks of the trees which are made to decorate the dining rooms and the money that is used to decorate the dining rooms of Pernambuco, and how maybe they had that much of interest in having a house near the river. So Cabral speaks of both, that is of landscape and also of the river. And these thoughts really equate the condition of nature and that of man living on the banks of Capibaribe River. So you can't separate nature and human beings, because human beings have a way of encroaching on nature and trying to be the one to make it his own and try to cultivate the land And in a way, man is brave enough to fight with the nature and try to accumulate as much land as possible, acquire it, and then start cultivation. Some of the people are like that. And so you find here that the river becomes an essential part of such a cultivation. Whatever be that cultivation, sometimes it may yield him a lot of money, and if he is wise, he will use it wisely. But most people, when they get accumulate money, they are not wise. They try to have palaces which they can't take care of, and they even by being filthy rich also, it has become, their life had become so very stagnant, and there's no change in that, and they are not really taking an effort to change that also. So in a way, you are finding here a situation of the river, and at the same time the poet is not really restraining himself to just the river. He is also speaking about the river banks, the landscape, the people, their condition, their houses, and what is evident from their houses. It is that which makes him say that there is stagnation, because the river is seeing the stagnation on the banks of the river, and the river itself is stagnant. That is, he had proved that through the first few stanzas, and how stagnant it is quite evident when he very humorously says that if you just dip your hands into the water of the river, you will come away with the black gloves and black boots and black cape. That is indeed a humorous enough situation. That kind of stagnation the river has, but that stagnation is limited not just to the river. It is in a way, it is spread to the people also. No, because they have become dirty, but they have become stagnant, not with life, no movement or no moving, no new ideas, and stagnant places and stagnant people are not happy. So it is that he speaks of through these few stanzas, few lines. I've taken only a few lines for this class because these lines are really important, and he is speaking philosophically about this landscape, and more about the landscape than about the river. The river is stagnant, he had already established in the first few stanzas. Now he is speaking about the stagnation of the landscape and also of the people who live on the banks of the Pavaratty river. Not because of the poverty of the people, but because of too much of money. One side there is poverty, and on the other side there is indeed the plenty, which had really made them stagnant. So you will be wondering how money can make you stagnant. It can, unless you have something to live for every day. And they don't have that. They have already accumulated. There is nothing to aspire for, and so their life had become really stagnant. So here you find that Cabral the poet is taking the readers through an understanding of the poem of landscape of the Pavaratty river, and he is speaking now of the landscape rather than the river. River he had already spoken, and now he is focusing on the landscape and what it yields. The one mention is already made, and now you find another mentioning of another type of people on the banks of the river. A totally different class of people, but stagnant at the same time. Okay, so go through the poem, go through the questions, and read whatever is given there in the as introduction. And if you find more, you can read that also. Okay, we'll meet you in the next class. Thank you.